So yes, thanks for joining us for this, which I think is, so maybe it's our fifth creative practice sharing session now. So we're joined today by artist, choreographer, curator, activist and researcher Gabriela Riccio, who's going to talk about her involvement in a project that I was also present at in Madrid, which I'll pass over to her shortly, and then we'll have a short presentation also from Raina from Wow Basic Income. So I'll quickly pass to Gabriela to begin, unless Rona, you had a quick question.
Yeah, I'm a professional singer. I'm just wondering, how do you become an artist to share practice? How can I share my practice in a future session?
It's a good question, and it's easy to answer, and it's email me, and I will put my email address in the chat. So yeah, I'll pass on to Gabriela for this presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. And well, I will just go through a little journey fast to get to my involvement in this One Income, Many Worlds performance. You were also present in Madrid. And I just, not to get distracted, I'm gonna bomb paste some some links in the chat that go through a little bit of a journey. I am a choreographer. I am I'm Neapolitan Italian, based between Naples and Madrid, where I'm living and being active, mainly stuck from the pandemic on. As maybe some of you have already heard of, in 2008, with the crisis in Italy, we had a very consistent movement of self-governed and self-managed cultural spaces. It was a cluster of occupations of symbolic spaces that were underutilized or utilized improperly or threatened to be privatized. And those occupations were mainly started by artists, people in the creative sector. And L'Asilo in Naples is one of those experiences. So we occupied a building, claiming the building to be declared a common. And over a 4-year time, we were in the building performing our practices. So this is an example of a living prefigurative practice where an expanded, informal and open community of artists, activists, and whoever wants to join it tries to reformulate a call to the city for the recognition of practices of commoning. And we elaborated over a 4-year period of time a tool, which is a juridical tool. Actually, it is a creative use of law where we try to institute the real practice of the commons in the city of Naples. And this had a successful outcome. So L'Asilo is the first officially recognized urban cultural common in Naples. And after L'Asilo's recognition, this process is expanded to 8 other centers for a total of 40,000 square meters, where different communities could experience a different way of being together and producing together, based on cooperation, on mutualism, on solidarity, sharing and pooling spaces, time, knowledge, and yeah. So from this experience, I joined and co-founded another adventure, which is a translocal network think tank utopic cluster of minds that's called the Institute of Radical Imagination, and you have already had Emanuele Braga on those sessions. And Emanuele also belongs to the Italian movement of these occupations with Macau, where he already spoke of their experience. So where more or less Macau was more experimenting on the economies with this common wallet. In Naples, we were more using the juridical tool to defend mutualism and practices that put the value of relationship at the center. So at the Institute of Radical Imagination, together with Emanuele and Marco Baravalle and other experiences, translocal, so not only Italian or Spanish based, we have opened a conversation online towards a manifesto, an Art for UBI manifesto, so which we really finalized into a document that we published, we elaborated and published. And also this manifesto was presented here as a tool. So using the Art for UBI manifesto as a background, a team of us started working on a performance, on a performing idea. Actually, Anna Rispoli, who's been part of the online conversations, and Anna Rispoli is an artistic director and creator, but she's also deeply involved and experimenting on different ways of the use of commonizing, putting in common resources. Anna was part of those conversations, and it was quite natural to start working together on her idea. Actually, during the same period of our meetings, Anna was elaborating her first idea of what is a performance that took place in the Wiener Festwochen, and that's called the Income, the Unconditional Speech. And on the base of this performance, this very one performance, and maybe I will try to share some images with you just to give you an idea of the work, and also starting with Anna on the screen to have her together with us. So let's try to see if it works. Yeah. So on purpose, there's no voice because the performance here is in German and with English subtitles, but it's just to give you a little bit the idea of the outcome of this work. What actually Anna did in Vienna was then proposed to us as a team within the Institute of Radical Imagination to work on. And we started working on a new performance. This time it was based in Madrid, and the title is One Income, Many Worlds, Una Renta, Mucho Mundos. The process to create a performance is almost the same. We started following the guidelines of Anna, with her participation, of course, working on the manifesto and trying to establish the basis of the manifesto, what could be a list of questions that we could have as a baseline for interviews to a group of citizens or non-citizens, of course, people based in Madrid or in Spain, and to interview them on how they relate to money, time, work, and of course basic needs. And these interviews were passing from the individual experience, and so collecting individual stories of how the life of these participants were really relating to those issues, then expanding to a utopian idea, asking them how would the world be and how would their life, first of all, change if they would benefit from a universal and unconditional basic income. So there we collected other answers, and we moved on to a larger question, like how would the world transform and be affected if this measure could be implemented on the universal level. So of course, we were challenging people with an idea of a utopian idea. Like today, it's quite a utopia, but it's based in personal experiences and in personal needs. What came out of this conversation that then becomes a text, which is a fictional, that takes form publicly in the form of a fictional assembly, is that we understand how people find, for example, difficult the idea of imagining the possibility of a universal basic income, because there's always the misunderstanding: if I get a universal basic income, then will I have to pay for everything? So one thing that is fundamental here is to understand that a universal and unconditional basic income is a measure that has to go hand in hand with universal basic services, healthcare, education. What was striking, for example, during the interviews in Madrid, another big topic that arose is the topic of the house. Because Madrid, of course, is a city that's going through a very strong gentrification process, and house rents are very high. So the lifestyle of people who are freelancer, independent professionals, is most of the time needs to share. Like most of the time, professionals in their 40s are not able to put up with resources to be able to have or own a house. Like actually, people perceive that it's pretty difficult, no matter how hard they work, to be able to have enough money or accumulate money, for example, to own a house. So the perspective is very different from what was the perspective of people who were, our parents, who could benefit from a totally different economic system of benefits, etc. So what arose from those interviews, for example, was this high level of anxiety. No matter how I work hard, I am always worried that I won't be able to make it because my work is not granted, because I don't have, my rights are not granted. And together with this precarity, a level of anxiety, a higher level of competition that people suffer to be in competition with each other, suffer to be pushed in a system that puts them to compete towards each other to be able to work. So when faced with the question, so what's valuable in your life, people would always in the great majority reply that relationships are important and that time is important. So here we see how a universal basic income could really be a measure to free up time not to trap people in the spiral of feeling obliged to accept no matter what job to cope with, to meet the how you say, to get to the month, to the living, to make a living, but also to be able to feel free to choose or to shift towards other works without fear of not being able to cope with the present situation. We also had professionals who were pretty satisfied and pretty passionate about their work, but they were also claiming for more time to also be able to do other things, which is not only the care work, but and I mean not only caring for family or children or family members, but actually to be able to be a doctor and a musician, for example. So to have time, people are gifted, people are full of talent, people are full of desires, but the way we conceive work and the way our societies are shaped nowadays don't allow this possibility to be seized by the majority of people. And okay, like this conversation could really then go into many details of the different stories we collected, but the performance as a tool is interesting. It's interesting for me for different aspects. One is that the way the process was really shared as a gift from Anna to the team that's been working in the Institute of Radical Imagination. And so the way this process can really be transferred to other teams that could implement this form of social investigation, but also expanding awareness and try to keep alive the discussion and make people think really and seriously on the possibility of implementing UBI. And on the other hand, is a powerful tool because the dispositive of this fictional assembly, this public speech, tells about personal stories, and those personal stories are embodied by the people who have told us their story. So it was very powerful to witness how people could really empathize and understand that their struggle is not their only one personal struggle, and that sometimes another possibility is there to be seized. And afterwards, after what I also found that worked very well with the performance was the panel that followed the performance. We had more of a panel where also Andy was present, where we could a little bit deepen in a more theoretical way the possibilities and the visions of implementing universal basic income. It was interesting because having the performance before the panel, everything was more based into reality, was more based into the real necessity and the real possibilities, having then a possible perspective design from a theoretical point of view. And the reason why I started telling a little bit about L'Asilo is that L'Asilo tells the story that sometimes an act of civil disobedience that's not only a protest, but envision a possibility and start to practice that possibility can really change the rules of game, because juridically we really implemented a new system in the city of Naples that entered into the administrative system in Italy and has really had quite an impact on institutional level. So this is a way also to bear in mind that imagining is also what our institution needs, and of course the people who embody those institutions probably needs to get closer to this possibility, to these different visions. The only regret I have is that no institutional figure was present at the performance, but I think that would be also very, very interesting. And I don't know, I mean, I think this is all. I don't want to take too much time. You'll tell me if...
Fantastic, Gabriella, really, thank you. It's like so clear and such like an inspiring project, and I really appreciate the context, the like very relevant context that you've given us there as well. And it's well, you've put the links in the chat for the actual video of that performance, which I think I'd really like to watch as well, like and spend some time with the stories and as well as, and I look forward to seeing the Madrid documentation as well when it becomes available. So I mean, yeah, I could ask a couple more questions, but I did, so it might be nice to open it up a little bit to other people in case they'd like any kind of questions or comments or resonances. I'll open it up to the floor, and if you'd like to start by just sort of saying who you are and where you are, that might be useful as well, because I missed that from the start.
So I say thank you for the links and for your presentation. It was inspiring, but I have to think about it.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Rona?
Yeah, this is really inspiring to hear what you're doing in your country. But here in the UK, we have an extremely far right-wing government, very undemocratic government, and their kind of remit is to make lives as uncomfortable as possible for people who are not the highest earners. So having a universal basic income or universal basic services in this country would be kind of like the antithesis of what they stand for in a way, because they're very, very far right wing, and they're not like previous conservative governments. They are more right wing than most conservative governments that we've had. So it's very inspiring to kind of hear what you're doing in your country, but I don't see it being on the cards in this country, you know, in the foreseeable future. Or if it is on the cards, it would be something that would be kind of exploited and done in a really kind of mean way. For example, universal basic income, if it was introduced into this country, would be a very kind of minimal rate of something like £40 a week, and I can't really see it being something that would give people kind of choice to live more freely, because I think that's the last thing this particular government wants. And I'm sorry to be such a negative, you know, kind of negative person, but I'm just being, you know, completely honest. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening here for the foreseeable future under the government that we have.
Thanks, Rona. I mean, I just wanted to maybe I had a similar sort of thought when Gabriella was talking about, well, the utopian aspect of the radical imagination, and kind of, I think, you know, one of the things maybe that I saw in the performance there that you were sharing, the one that happened in Austria and in Madrid, is creating that forum for dreaming or for utopianism that might then, I mean, is there anything that you'd want to, I mean, do you think universal basic income could happen in Italy, or how do you see the relationship between the reality and the utopian and the radical imagination playing out, Gabriella?
Yeah, well, actually, we are in Italy, like I have a little bit the two perspectives, Italy and Spain. And as Rona was highlighting, yes, the problem is that when we speak of we have nothing like a universal basic income, neither in Spain nor in Italy. What we have are attempts like the reddito di cittadinanza, citizenship income in Italy, which now is actually under attack to be reduced. It was shortly implemented, like in the last 3 years. It's been attacked and reduced because what is actually happening is that in this moment where Italy and Spain have like 40% of the recovery fund investment after the pandemic, actually this money is being devoted to the private sector. And what we see is that under the label of the green transition and the digital transition, what is being implemented and empowered is the private sector. So we really are in danger to really even lose what we had in terms of services and welfare and common spaces. Like, once again, the system is pushing towards enhancing productivity when, for example, the pandemic has shown that when the world stops, the planet starts to thrive. And we had the COP26 and the G20. And what we see is that it's so hard to have the government to be able to slow down. So instead of slowing down to the claim of a green transition or a digital transition, they respond with stronger investments to enhance an overproduction. So the universal basic income in a utopian way, as also stated in the RPUBI manifesto, is a cosmogenetic measure to be able to slow down from this acceleration of capitalism. Would it be green capitalism or digital capitalism? And it would be probably the best measure to help our planet to stop overproduction, to stop moving too much in a way. I don't know if I'm able to explain the point. But yes, we are very, very, very far from implementing the measures.
And Shemaine?
So I was just thinking about the performance and the people that you spoke to, because it's participation. Just simply, how did you find these people, and was it a series of questions? Yeah, you approached the performance and finding the people.
Yeah. So we were looking for a group that should be, in a way, symbolic of reality. So not to be a group that would just be a propaganda over manifesto, but it would really be the most diverse in terms of gender, age, also a different type of contracts, like people would be on a long-term contract, professionals, and people be precarious or freelancers, unemployed, house workers. Yeah, so we try to keep the group as diverse as possible. And we had a set of questions. If you want, I could even share them with you if you're curious. Do I understand correctly?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So whatever you
yes.
say.
Yes. It was a quite long list of questions, and it was just slightly adapted to according to the persons we were talking to. But we would start with, who are you, just to get the definition of person, and that would be then turned into, and what else? So what else are you? And then we would go like, what are your basic needs and how do you organize to meet them? What is valuable in your life? What is a typical day for you? So some jobs are more routine based and some others are not. And how is your relationship to free time? So what is free time? Do you need more free time in your life? What would you do if you had more free time? What is pleasure for you? And what makes you happy? And then we would just go into the relationship with work. So what does work mean to you? Are work and money related? And here, of course, it's very interesting what you get from, professionals and freelancer or precarious people. And what do we work for? Who do we work for? And how much do you identify with the values of money? So it was digging a little bit into work ethics. So what kind of work ethics do we have? Where do we inherit this work ethics from? Do you feel obliged? What's your sense of responsibility? But what is also passion in your work, and what is career? Like working towards reaching a career, to reaching a status. And then if you're responsible for other people, if you can neutralize your expenses, if you are a salaried worker, would you like not to, and vice versa? So the reasons behind that. And then we would ask a relationship, for example, with bureaucracy in life, and then collecting experiences relating money, work, and time, moments one could have felt ashamed of not earning enough or not being able to, or so develop a sense of guilt. And if people are capable of disconnecting from the network, from the web, so socials, for example, so how that does communication impact on the average time, and also to listen to dreams of disappearing, from communication. So how is life when we're not bound to this constant availability 24/7? This was also opening up the problems we've had nowadays. Of course, we still speak of work and we consider it as a post-Fordist structure, but we are far beyond that. Work, even more so after the pandemic, when now we also work from home, like really the work has invaded every morning and every space of life. So how to reverse that?
Thank you, Gabriella, and thank you, Shemaine, for opening up the to get into the detail of those questions, because I think I'd like to make a link back to some of the other practices that we've shared so far in these sharing sessions. That to me, this approach that you've had with your project is like a very deep questioning and a deep listening, and as someone who kind of witnessed the performance, it has that sort of emotional level to it, with the kind of spending slightly more time with the people. So it's a smaller number perhaps of people that you've interviewed than we've seen in other projects, but kind of the care taken to really get into the personal aspects of the questions, I think humanizes it and makes it something that people can connect with. So I'm just going to, as sort of self-appointed timekeeper, move the conversation over and invite Rainer to present the Wow Basic Income project, but we should still have a few minutes kind of at the end if there's still some questions to join up both presentations. But thank you very much, Gabriella, and I'll pass on to Rainer.
Okay, thank you for having me here. And also Matthias has joined, who is part of our team. Yeah, we are a group of 5 people in the city of Hamburg in Germany. And to be honest, we are not artists in the sense that we are professional artists or full-time artists. And we started, we come from a merely activist group in Hamburg, the Basic Income Network in Hamburg. Yeah, one starting point for our project was that we contributed to the work on in the European network on basic income, the UBIE. And there were a lot of conferences, a lot of academic and political talk. And we thought it would be important to have another perspective, another level added to this conversation in Europe. And then our idea of exhibition touring through Europe emerged from this need. So I'm going to share a few pictures. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, this what you still see it? Yes. Okay, the idea is to leave the more academic and political discussions and offer to the public a way to discuss and to be confronted with the idea of basic income in public spaces. And here you can see one perspective into our design of the exhibition, which could be, which is in English, the name is Wow Basic Income, and in German it's Mensch Grundeinkommen. Yeah, and to start from the idea one step before, we had to talk about the narrative, what we want to present to the people around the idea of basic income. And we've got 5 proposals by the company we work together with. And then there was a clear direction into the idea having a narrative of a village, a kind of village where the future of society is discussed and negotiated. And the whole narrative is that this exhibition is a kind of background, a kind of for a meeting, for a kind of village meeting, where people who are in favor of basic income want to discuss the ideas of a good life in Europe. And in Germany, we have a kind of maybe old-fashioned telling that in the center of villages, we have so-called in German Dorflinde. Here it's called the lime tree. It's a tree in the center of the village where the gossip takes place and where maybe also the decision making is taken for the where people meet for the village. And well, you see here, it's not a tree, these are flags, and the idea is to have this tree not in a natural tree, but in an abstract tree representing this idea of a central place in the village. Yeah, and the whole concept is, to have a overall view on the exhibition. It could be like this. We kind of have, we have about 8 modules like this little huts, which, yeah, the village is formed of huts with a special focus on the issue of good life and basic income. And above all, you see these flags, colorful flags, which is maybe also a kind of roof above the village. Yeah, one hut is, for example, or yeah, this hut is, it's not a hut, it's a module. The hut is and it's about the ideas of a good life. It's the central question of the village, and we ask the people, what does a good life mean to you? And these flags are not stable in the sense that all is ready, but people are invited to add new flags and to lift them up. So they can choose a pen, they can get a new flag, and they can write down their answers about a good life. For example, finishing sentences like a good life must include, and so on, or what can society contribute to a good life, or with an unconditional basic income I could finally, and so on. And then, yeah, day by day, where the exhibition is placed, people add more and more flags, and it's becoming a growing piece of common creativity. Another hut is, this is still the idea of the to have a kind of opinion poll with this flags, and we could hand out glasses, no, not glasses, how's it called, telescopes to watch them, because they are put up above the village. Yeah, one hut is about the idea of sustainable economy and the idea of sharing. And like the other huts, we are not starting with statistics, and we are not starting with theories from politicians or from academic people, but we start with the personal questions. In this case, what does success mean to you? And in this case, we have the idea to have a kind of an interactive diagram where you can show your personal attitude towards success, linking the perspective, you personally, your family, a company, or the society as a whole, for example, and then you can link different perspectives of or different kinds of success, like recognition, profit, environmental protection, happiness. So it's broadened the perspective, but you are invited to choose what is important to you. And then altogether, this is becoming a lively, also a kind of an opinion poll where all the threads are shown and is growing day by day. Another example is the discussion about work and leisure. Also here we start with a personal question, the question all of you might know well from also, especially from the Swiss campaign. What would you be working as if your income was taken care of? And the play you could be part of here is to have, yeah, it's a kind of laboratory, and you have kind of sand in different colors, and each color represents a kind of time, like the family time, the voluntary work, the personal development, and of course the paid employment. And then you decide how much, how much one color is filled into this tiny glasses, in these tubes. So, and the space left in the tube is the free time you want to have. Yeah, altogether we want to cover 8 perspectives, and we have tried to give one sentence as a thesis, what we want to represent in the exhibition. For example, on work and leisure, it's the theory UBI combines a more relaxed society with individual prosperity and economic productivity. But it's more a working title for us to know the general message. Okay, so here again we have an overall view. For example, this is the place before the main station and the cathedral in Cologne, where the exhibition might be one day. Okay, so this is about our project so far, about our exhibition concept, which maybe is not up to now a really art project, but of course it's a creative project. But we feel it's important to have also something that is connecting all the places where the exhibition is going. Maybe you could add another. I'm looking for, just coming back with the picture. Just a moment. So I'm sharing again something, just a moment. Okay. So do you see it? Okay. So these are some of the places where, or the places where we have some people locally which are somehow committed to invite our exhibition and to be prepared to have it there. And the idea is now to add to the concept an artistic network. So we propose that each city and each place where, each venue where the exhibition takes place will invite artists from that region, from that town, to contribute to the exhibition with a piece of art around the ideas of a good life, but of course quite open to any kind of ideas. And as you can see, we have in the center of the village, there is a place which is flexible to meet and where also maybe artists could present their pieces and their ideas. But of course, this could also be a kind of fringe program together with other institutions like theaters, museums, or schools or universities, whatever you think. So it's an open concept, which is now enlarged with our idea to build up a kind of network where also the artists from the different regions talk to each other, to exchange their ideas like we do here in this session. And then maybe they can visit also other cities with their pieces of art. So with this, we add a kind of connecting network to the exhibition. Not only the exhibition itself is traveling, but also the artists contributing to the exhibition are having an exchange among themselves, and they form a network which can work before and even after the exhibition is at one place. Yeah, okay, so that is so far our idea, and now our big challenge is to get this funded. Which is a really big challenge because, it's not that cheap to have a exhibition which is stable, which is practical and solid for any kind of weather, because it should be most often outside. And so we are now currently in a longer period of looking for funds for people who can fund this. Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And
thank you, Rainer.
Yeah.
And thank you again for like a very super clear, really lovely context and kind of an exciting proposal, I think, and something that has a lot of really great tools and ideas for engagement and creating spaces of dialogue and doing something that is both international and locally rooted as well. And as you say, maybe the stage that you're at the moment, or a question for us is, how we could contribute to it if it was to happen, and also how we could make it a reality, or what you need from us as also a network or a growing network of artists. Perhaps, interested in creating exactly this, the spaces for dialogue and understanding universal basic income at the grounding it in some kind of reality in local situations. But again, I'd love to open it up for questions. I can see that Rona has asked us a more sort of general question in there, which it might be nice to kind of save for a few minutes, and we'll come back to it. But is there anything that specifically about sort of Rainer's presentation that people might like to ask for any clarity on? Or Charlotte?
Hi everyone. Hi Rainer. Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was really, really fantastic and super ambitious, but why not? And I also want to take the opportunity to thank Gabrielle as well, because I didn't say, but I thought your presentation was also really interesting. I love the way that you used practice to articulate the possibilities of UBI, and I think that's very powerful. But sorry, moving back to Rainer. As I said, I think as a concept it's brilliant and I love it. And I guess, I'm based in London, and I was just sort of going through my head thinking of possible venues and blah blah blah, and I couldn't really think of anything. I think if you can't get that done in Germany, then you can forget it in you can forget it in the UK for the moment. But I say the UK, but actually you might find that Wales is a place to start. Like, I wouldn't bother in England for now, but Wales might be the Welsh government are quite sympathetic to UBI, and they're trialling some UBI for care leavers quite soon, I believe. There's a pilot project coming up. So there's a sympathy, and they are more sympathetic to, it's a Labour government, so, their creative budget is more sympathetic to progressive agendas, I guess. But I suppose one thing that did occur to me is that obviously the scale and the reach of your proposal is very ambitious. Could you start off with something a lot smaller? Like, for example, I was just thinking of similar projects that I've encountered where it's like a small, they kind of get hold of a small vehicle, like an old ice cream van, or like a catering van or something like that, and then it becomes a kind of traveling exhibition that's quite easy to pack up and pack in at the end of each day, and it can be done with a small number of, you know, 1 or 2 staff, rather than a huge permanent or semi-permanent installation that's going to cost a lot and be, I mean, certainly in this country it would be subject to vandalism if it's outdoors, and you would have to hire security guards, and I mean, you'd be looking at a town council putting in a lot of money, and they'd want sponsorship, and so practicalities wise, and then if you had a small kind of more mobile sort of ambassador in a way for your more ambitious project, you could go around the festivals, and I think that music festivals would be a really you know, venue where people might be willing to engage. And I think that the visuals of your design with the flags, and you know, it's very I guess it's utopian, but and the village idea, I think, would work really well at that sort of not necessarily like a rock festival, but like arts festivals, the Hay Festival, literature festivals, Edinburgh Festival. Those are the ones that I know in this country, or in the UK. But yeah, just some initial thoughts, but great, love it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Yeah, we had quite a deep conversation about how large our exhibition should be and how mobile it should be. And it's a mobile concept, so it should be relatively easy to put it together and only need maybe one large van to store it, and then traveling to the next place. But also it's and maybe just 2 people are enough to put it up and put it down. But we started thinking, well, let's make something that is really visible, and that where you have to occupy a whole place really, and not just if it's okay. If getting all the money is really becoming too difficult, then we can scale down anyway at any time. But at the moment, we want to play big and come with a big idea, and the bigger the idea is, maybe it's then the people who have more money and who are open to these kind of ideas are more likely to say, oh, this is a project which they like and identify with it. And so, but you are right. It's a difficult. It's on the fringes what is realistic and what is utopian in the practicality of the project itself. Yeah, and of course, it's not only Wales. I'm also from Hamburg here. I'm very curious about the developments in Scotland. So, I think, yeah, those parts of the UK are really good, would be really good places to have a traveling exhibition there if the discussion on basic income is becoming more virulent. But this shouldn't be a top-down project altogether. We offer this exhibition, and once it's there, we need people on the ground who invite us and who do the preparation in their cities. So they need maybe, yeah, maybe one person is not enough. You need a bit of a network, some resources, and so. But it's a development over time, and also we need professional help with doing all the operation. Up to now, it's a volunteers project in the team. Of course, we had the professional support for the design of and later for the production, which is the most expensive part. Yeah, it's a challenge. Okay.
Thanks, Rainer. I think Rona has a question.
Yeah, I didn't understand what Rainer meant about the discussions around UBI in Scotland and Wales becoming violent. That didn't make any sense to me. In what respect?
I didn't want to say violent. Maybe it was virulent. Maybe it's not an English term.
Did you mean virulent?
Yeah, virulent. Yeah.
Enthusiastic. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good to get the clarification though. Thanks, Rona. Toby?
Hi, sorry, can you hear me? My computer's Zoom's crashed on my computer, so I'm using my phone. But yeah, so we wanted to say thanks, Rona, for the presentation, also Gabriella. But I think for them, I know that Ireland have committed to running a UBI pilot for artists and arts workers, which is going to start in March or April next year. It's still, the details are still a little bit thin on the ground, but I think they're going to get something like €325 a month for 2,000 people. So Ireland might be a good place to approach too. But I think what's interesting about both projects is that it's approaching UBI from, it's sort of moving towards UBI instead of that being the starting point. So it gives people a much wider entry point into sort of discussing UBI and how it can be reflected on from different perspectives, instead of it being like the central thing and then kind of people having to move out from there. And I think both work in a kind of consciousness raising kind of way of just, people seeing other people's perspectives and understanding how other people would react or use basic income. I know that quite often the argument against basic income is that, other people would spend it really badly and they'd just buy booze and crisps, wouldn't they? But I use it responsibly. So I think it's both work really well in that way of kind of expanding how sort of our understanding of how other people would engage with it and how other people experience. I mean, I think that's the thing which really jumped out at me, Gabriella, when you said that most people said that relationships and time were the most valuable things to them. And I think that's something which people don't. I think everyone knows it intrinsically, but it's not made explicit that often.
Nice one. Cheers, Toby. Yes, Shemaine.
It's just nice to see these two pieces of work sort of in juxtaposition of each other. So you've got one from a deeply sort of performance drama, and then other more visual art, sense of play and colour. But still have that those messages and that exploring the themes within them, and highly participatory, which is really nice.
Yeah, I also wanted to sort of pick up on the fact that they're both really interesting projects as sites for discussion about universal basic income. So creating that opportunity for getting more people involved in the conversation who might not already be involved in it, and kind of creating a different way of framing these questions that sometimes are seen as barriers to even beginning to imagine that a universal basic income or a post-work future would be viable. So I just also, and we seem to have got to a point which I do agree with. It should go to places, or it could happen in the places where universal basic income is already on the table, or is likely, or more likely than other places. But how would you seek for these, either the exhibition or the performance, as a tool that could be passed somewhere to go to places where it is least likely, or where the discussion is not started? How would you feel about that? It's a question to both of you.
Well, what is there in Italy or in Spain is nothing like a universal basic income. So technically, even Madrid, where it took place, is a city where there is no universal basic income, of course. So here in Spain, they have a measure that's called the Ingreso Mínimo Vital, which is a survival minimum wage, which of course is very conditional to a certain level of poverty. But it is interesting to see how the performance and the process towards the performance is dispositive to enhance a higher level of conversation, public conversation around the topic of the universal basic income. And on the one side, there is more space for this conversation after this incredible times we've been going through with the pandemic, because we've seen that in a way the virus forced the governments to distribute unconditional basic incomes for certain times, and people could also, in a way, unwillingly, without any knowledge of that, experience what happens, even if the free time wasn't a time to be outside. But what I'm saying is that the way the universal basic income is not a measure to redistribute finances and economies, is a measure that triggers the deeper question of what are our values and what can be measured with money, what in life can be measured with money, and that the valuable things in life cannot be measured. Really, there's no metric with money to measure how we relate to each other and how we support each other and how can we share. So it is a trigger to start questioning the system and make a leap into a paradigm shift towards a lifestyle that could be more adherent to the present reality. Unfortunately, reality accelerates, and technically is even difficult for the governments, for the huge institutional machine to adapt to the changes. And the very fastest hand that is always ready to respond is capitalism. It's always twisting even the basic necessities like environment and health into the machine of the capital. We've seen it. So it is really there the option to not simply dream, but start seriously, playfully, seriously, utopically, seriously put on some proposition on the table. And I think that there's a lot of disinformation, because there are initiatives like initiative of the UBI on European level, and there are serious initiatives that there's discussion also on an international level around that. So it would be also interesting to make people more aware of those steps.
Thank you, Gabriela. And I think you've mentioned quite a few things within that answer about, consciousness raising, the paradigm shift that art could possibly create through allowing a different type of imaginary post-capitalist sort of desires as something that kind of, art processes can help channel. Raina, do you have any thoughts on where where is a good place? Does it have to be places that are already amenable, or do the conversations have to happen with people that are already amenable to the idea of basic income?
Well, I think the advantage of having creative and cultural approaches is that it works more or less in any environment and with people of any background. If you are coming too early, if you have people with doubts and many questions about the issue, then it's maybe, yeah, it's making things worse. If you going too early into a political discussion, then you have ideologies, then you have party politics, then you have the question about taxes and about yeah, the difficulties and the misery of the present welfare state and so on. But if we start with open questions and which are relevant for everybody's life, then people are open to think about the thing, about the idea of unconditional basic income and other progressive things without having